It's the law that put a stop to robo-signing, the practice that allowed the lending industry to keep up with rampant mortgage defaults. But now AB 284 is being blamed for a number of ills, from a mini bubble in home prices to neighborhood blight. What's the answer? We'll hear from both sides. That's next on Face to Face.
This is Face to Face with John Ralston.
Welcome to Face to Face. We'll bring you newsmakers and commentary you won't find anywhere else. John Ralston has the night off. The good news, home prices in Nevada are on the rise. The bad news, it's likely an artificial boost in values based in part on a scarcity of homes for sale. That's because foreclosures have dried up thanks to a law that went into effect last year. Assembly Bill 284 put the brakes on the robo-signing banks relied on to process massive amounts of default. Should the market be left to correct on its own? In a little while, we'll hear from experts on both sides. But first, a man in the trenches from VIP Realty, Glenn Plantone. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
I want to show our viewers first an example of exactly what we're talking about, the number of defaults in Nevada before and after this law took effect back in September. We can show that from July 2009 through September of 2011, filings of notices of default averaged 5,431. In October of 2011, AB 284 went into effect. Since then, notices of default have averaged 211 per month. That's a huge drop. What does that tell our viewers, what that has done to your business?
Well, it's really affected our business drastically. I'm in the business of not only selling houses to owner-occupied buyers, but investors, and that's where primarily I do most of my business. The inventory is as low as it's ever been. There's only about 400 available bank-owned REO properties on the market right now in the MLS, the multiple listing service, that are not contingent or pending, meaning available, you could buy today.
And obviously, unless you have to, you don't want to sell your home at this point. So the homes that were attractive to investors are the foreclosures, right?
Correct. They've got obviously the best discount, the best as far as an investor wants, because he wants a cap rate or rate of return, and you've got to give him at the best prices. And when you're looking at 400, when we used to sell as many as 2,000 foreclosures a month, that's about a 1-week supply of inventory is what we're looking at.
What about prices now? You're seeing this little mini bubble. We've had an increase in prices the last 5 months, at least in Las Vegas. Do you think that's going to last?
If they don't start foreclosing on people, yes, it's going to last because they can't build houses fast enough. The thing that people have to realize is that we did overcorrect, and that's important to note. So there's upside, and there's been upside for a long time, and it could go up a little bit more without really it being a problem. But if the inventory continues to stay as low as it is, we've got some serious problems.
What do you mean we overcorrected?
Well, it went down more than it should have. When prices are down to $50 a square foot for a house, when it costs $70 to build it, it doesn't make sense that it's that low. So it's coming up, which is good, but again, they can't ramp up quick enough. New construction starts went from about 300 a month. They've doubled in the last couple of months to about 600, which is good news, but it still takes 4 to 6 months to build a house. And it'll take 4 to 6 months before those new houses are online. In
fact, we checked, new home permits have actually gone up 44% year over year. And, you know, to a lot of people, that's a good thing because we've seen the construction market crash here and people in that industry didn't have jobs. But at the same time, if we do see foreclosures come back, you're going to just be contributing really to a glut of homes on the market, correct?
Well, it's funny, but we're actually looking at building houses right now because there's no inventory. And we don't think you're going to see any inventory till March, maybe April of next year.
Do you think that's good for the market to build homes now?
I think it is. You know, if you've got owner-occupied people that can't buy a house right now, FHA buyers can't get a house. There's people, even like myself, that won't even sell to a FHA buyer. And it's unfortunate, but because they come in with 2 appraisals, we don't have time to wait around. Appraisers come in and they always want to go low. We just bought a house and we put in 20 grand to make it perfect. So we want it to sell for the top of the market, not the bottom of the market. So appraisers are a big problem, a big issue to this. And they're holding prices back in one regard because they're afraid of coming in and saying, hey, this house is really worth much more.
So the investors have an advantage with the cash sales?
They do. And in the last 3 or 4 sales I've sold have sold for $5,000 to $10,000 more than what they should have sold for, because there's multiple offers and investors come in and they'll pay $5,000 or $10,000 more than what it's worth because they know otherwise they're not going to get it, and they're still getting a very good cap rate or rate of return.
Okay. Realtors, you know, by and large, are not really fond of this law because of the lack of foreclosures that have created this dearth of homes for sale. Let me show you this. I believe this was from Reuters. This bill did nothing to solve the crisis. It's just prolonged it, Reno real estate agent Ricky Beach said. Sooner or later, the banks will work out how to deal with the law, and then foreclosures will hit the market and prices will crash back down. You know, we're hearing about an artificial bubble. What I wonder, though, is why in 2007 were realtors not complaining about an artificial bubble then?
I'm with you. Well, you know, there's two things that I want to say, and people always talk about the shadow inventory. Well, there's two things you have to look at. Number one is the people that have been yet to be foreclosed upon. Put those over there. Then the other people over here that have already been foreclosed upon, that the bank is supposedly holding inventory. Well, if the banks have inventory, we need it desperately. Release it, it'll get sold real quickly, and the banks can turn that asset over and do something with it. I honestly don't believe there's a lot of that over there. I think there's all these people that have, I know people have been in their house as much as 2, 3, 4. I knew one girl, 6 years, had been in her house without making a payment, hadn't been foreclosed upon. So there's a real need to foreclose on people from an inventory point of view. Plus, people expect, they know that if I haven't made a payment in 2 years, I should be foreclosed upon. And it's a natural process. But unfortunately, they're not being foreclosed on, and there's no inventory over here to sell, thus no inventory at all.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, more on the very complicated problem of getting the housing market back into gear in Nevada. Don't go away. Thanks for staying with us. We're talking about AB 284. That's the law that went into effect last October and has kept the supply of homes on the market low and kind of pressed prices up a little bit higher. Okay, the law certainly has helped some owners. This is also from that Reuters story from last week. Bernardo Becerra recalls that on September 29th, 2 days before the law took effect, Bank of America Corp. Initiated foreclosure proceedings against his Las Vegas home. He had last paid his mortgage in May 2009 on loans totaling $550,000, but for a house now valued at $348,000. When he took out the loans in May 2006, his home was worth $700,000. Becerra says Bank of America has not pursued the foreclosure and for the first time in 3 years seems willing to consider a loan modification. Has this given the banks a little bit more incentive to deal with homeowners?
It could. Actually, my home was modified. It took me over 2 years, and I tried 5 different times. Went through HAMP and HARP and all these different programs, and I finally got it modified with a principal reduction. So it can happen, but you've got to be real diligent about it. So,
you know, our home prices here are so low, and it seems to me that the short sales, which really have pretty much taken over this market, have pushed those prices down lower. Wouldn't it be better for neighborhoods, for current homeowners, if banks really engaged in principal reduction and left people in their homes? That doesn't have an effect on prices then, does it?
Well, it may, but that would be the solution.
How does principal reduction have an effect on prices?
Well, there's going to be less inventory, just like there is now. Less inventory means prices are going to stabilize, and they're not going to go down.
But you're not going to see the free fall that you have with the short
Correct.
Sales, right? And the foreclosures.
That's the best thing to happen if they start to modify people, but they're not doing that, unfortunately.
What about, do you have any hope with the settlement, the Justice Department settlement that Catherine Cortez Masto got for Nevada?
No, in fact, that's why I'm on the show probably today, is because I wrote a rebuttal to that whole fiasco recently, and because of that it got picked up by several people, and I just believe that AB 284 is not a good thing overall. It's really hurt the market more than it's helped.
But what about the global settlement with the lenders that the Justice Department took part in? Do you think that will force banks to engage in more principal reduction?
It could, and I think that's what's going to happen. If you look back at 2009, 75% of all sales were REO properties, bank-owned foreclosures. 7% were short sales. Now, for the first time ever, short sales have passed REOs. So that's a good thing, and that's what the banks really want. They want to keep the property and sell it as the highest price they can, and a short sale typically sells for a higher price than an REO property because they're going to keep the people in the house and get it sold. But the best bet, one past that, would be obviously to modify it, keep the people in the house, they'll stay, make payments, everybody's happy.
And you also said that this law is contributing to blight in neighborhoods because obviously if people can't afford to make their mortgage payments, they're less likely to make improvements in their house and keep...
I think we're seeing that, but because inventory is so low right now, I think that everybody's aggressive on trying to buy properties, and when you drive around, you don't see, you know, every other house with a for sale sign like you did before, so it's a little harder to tell what house is vacant and what house is not, even though you can tell there are signs.
All right, Mr. Plantone, we appreciate you joining us, and when we come back,